Hello and praise the sun. I'm the tech reviewer and today we're going to be reviewing the Xbox One Elite controller. The Xbox One Elite controller by Microsoft not only works as a great controller for your Xbox One, but it also works as a controller for your PC, whether it's at Windows 8.1 or Windows 10, pretty much all the PCs, as long as it's those kind of two PCs. I've been personally testing this controller for 6 months, getting to know all of its features so I can give you a real review. I'm not one of those reviewers who's going to take it out of the box and 5 minutes later presume to give you a review of its features and tell you to buy it. I've actually been using it and I'm going to tell you a lot of detailed information. I've gone out and made the most detailed review of this product I could, far more detailed than any that are existing on YouTube or maybe in the world. So just go ahead and watch it. It's free and you might learn some cool stuff.
The Elite controller was released in October 2015. Microsoft called it an elite controller for the elite gamer, and I'd be inclined to agree, except really, even the beginner gamer can enjoy this controller. It hasn't been out for long, but it currently shows no signs of being supplanted by any other technologies. Since it worked with PCs as well, odds are this will remain a useful piece of technology for years to come. The Xbox One Elite Wireless Controller is listed on the Xbox Store at about $169.99, which is basically as much as a new console. Seriously, I looked it up and you can get a Wii with 4 controllers, 7 games, Mario Galaxy and a Wii Fit, all for about the price of this controller. So it's not a budget item. Now, this review comes a few months into the lifespan of this controller, but hear me out. I've been using this controller extensively for almost 6 months, and I've really gotten a feel for it with many different games. Seriously, I have 5 different custom settings for Call of Duty that I made just for that game alone. Luckily, I've got you guys a special price, so check the link in the description to get your own Elite controller. I've found it for $140 for you, which is amazing, but the price might not last forever, so check it out fast. Just click the link in the description. The Xbox Elite controller is also available as part of a bundle with the Elite Xbox, which I'll be reviewing in a different video. It's a good value, and this is also the way in which I got the Elite controller I'll be reviewing for you in this video. Now, without further ado, let's look at the controller and the case. The Xbox One Elite Wireless Controller comes in a sleek plastic and fabric case. I really love this case, and I always keep my Xbox Elite controller in it when I'm not using it. It keeps it nice and pristine in condition, and it always looks really good. When my housekeeper comes over, I just put the controller in its case, and I don't need to worry about it getting dirty or lost. The case features recesses for all the knobs and widgets that come with the controller. It only has room for one of the 2 D-pads, but you can always put the other on the controller itself. Overall, the controller fits very nicely into this case. The case itself is small and seems not to take up any space at all, almost. It also has this neat pouch on the inside top that I like to keep a microfiber cloth in, and also the included cable. The Elite controller comes with this really nice cable. Seriously, it's all threaded and sturdy looking. It's just way better than the regular cable. It's more than long enough for any video gaming needs, and it's sweet. The Xbox One Elite wireless controller can't be charged, so this is really just for playing games when you don't want to use batteries, or for connecting the controller to the PC. Now, let's look at the controller itself. The first thing you notice about the Xbox One Elite controller is it has a cool, brushed plastic finish. The back is this weird texture rubber that feels really expensive and nice, and to top it off there's aluminum detailing on the triggers and a few other places. The triggers and buttons are really nice. They're just cool looking and they feel a lot more substantial than the regular controller. Speaking of substantial, the Xbox One Elite wireless controller is quite a bit heavier than the standard controller. It gets a bit lighter if you plug it in instead of using batteries, but it's still pretty heavy. This would be a criticism as my hands do get pretty tired after holding this controller for several hours. I do have small hands though, so someone who's used to an Xbox controller might prefer it, someone with big hands. I'm used to a PS3 controller, and the Xbox One Elite wireless controller is comically heavy and large compared to the PS3 controller. Then again, it adds to the feeling of substantiality that the controller has, which is good. When you have all 4 aluminum paddles set into place, it feels even heavier. Unlike the regular Xbox One controller, which is colorful, the Elite controller has a serious gray on black color scheme, which means you can use it for something serious, like controlling a police drone or something. I don't know, I've never used it for anything remotely serious, but I still think the scheme looks cool, cooler than the regular controller. Sometimes games refer to the buttons by their colors though, as in, they'll have a big red block that you're supposed to somehow know you're supposed to press the B button. Is it B that's red? Yeah, B. Like the regular controller, the Elite controller uses batteries by default instead of rechargeable pack. There actually is no rechargeable pack that works yet for the Elite controller, which is a major flaw, which means that you have no choice but to change the batteries. I find they last a pretty long time, though they go quickly if you're listening to audio for a long time, like when you're watching a movie. You can avoid this just by plugging it in to the Xbox itself with the included premium cable. Overall, the batteries tend to last about 3 weeks before I have to change them. It's 2 AA's, so it's not really that expensive. By the way, I like to plug my headphones into this controller when I'm watching movies on Netflix. The sound that comes out of it is really great, though not noticeably better than my other Xbox One controller, which is this interesting Desert Ops theme. By the way, some Xbox One controllers, namely the older black ones, don't have a jack in the bottom to plug standard headphones in. This is a really useful feature, so try to avoid controllers if they don't have it. They cost about the same thing as these newer, better controllers, and I just love the audio jack feature. The controller's finish seems somehow resistant to scratches. I usually clean it with a microfiber cloth once a week, and it still looks shiny and new. Now, let's have a look at the special features included in the Xbox One Elite wireless controller that aren't present on the standard one. The Elite controller features room for 2 interchangeable knobs, a D-pad, and 4 removable paddles on the back. It also has 2 hair trigger locks, I like to call them stoppers, on the back, which change the action on the triggers. Each thumbstick has 3 possible configurations. The different stick heads are held in place via these cool magnets. They work really well, and I've never actually had a stick fly off in the months I've had of playing with it. I'm sure that other companies, who I won't name right now, will knock this controller off, and when they do, the magnets will suck. But Microsoft did a good job, and on the authentic Elite controller, the magnets hold all the accessories in place really well. By the way, the thumbsticks, the D-pad, and the paddles are all held in place with magnets. First, there's the standard concave thumbstick. This thumbstick is very similar to the one that's on the standard controller, except it's made of this nice molded rubber and feels a lot nicer. This is a good middle-of-the-road thumbstick, and I use it most of the time. It's pretty accurate and it feels okay, and there's not much to say about it except it's very similar to the regular joystick on a normal controller. Next, they decided to include a convex thumbstick, which is very similar in feel to a PS3 or PS4 controller. This is a great thumbstick. It's by far the most comfortable, plus it looks pretty sharp. It's less accurate than the concave one though, owing to the fact that there's no place for your thumb to really grip in there. I like to use this one when I'm playing RPGs like Final Fantasy Type 0 HD, because, I don't really have to worry about split-second result. I just want the controller to feel comfortable in my hand as I go through these menus. It's not the best for Call of Duty though, as in Call of Duty you want maximum accuracy and really want to get one of the scooped out thumbsticks. Speaking of accuracy, I've saved the best for last. The third stick is an extended version of the concave design that juts out about twice as far from the body of the controller as the regular stick. This means that the stick has a larger move area and is more sensitive. I really like to use this as my right stick when I'm playing COD or Halo. It actually gives a noticeable advantage as it's much easier to aim accurately. On the downside, it's kind of awkward to hold, especially with the paddles in, and it gets uncomfortable after a while. I use this thumbstick when I'm playing Call of Duty competitively, and I've never been let down. After a while though, I switch back as it starts to strain my hand. Next up are the hair trigger locks. The hair trigger locks are okay. You snap them down in the back, and the action of the triggers changes. This feature is meant to help you shoot faster in games like Call of Duty, and it does work, but not amazingly. The stoppers feel a little loose. They're kind of jiggly and overall feel like the least solidly built part of the controller. You get the feeling they might break off if you hit really down on the triggers. They also don't lower the action of the triggers by enough to really make a difference. The idea of hair trigger locks is to shave about 50 milliseconds off your reaction time by cutting out the time the button spends traveling down and back up again. This doesn't work on the same shot since it has to travel the same distance the first time to engage it as if the lock was off, so it's not as good as switching it to the button. And it also feels way less comfortable to press the button down when the lock is on. It kind of hurts your fingers after a while. It also feels much more pleasant to pull the trigger down and shoot a corresponding weapon in Call of Duty when the lock is off. It's just nice feeling your finger go all the way down in that trigger, so I don't really like the hair trigger locks for that reason. In fact, the only times I keep the lock on is if I'm playing Call of Duty and have a burst fire rifle like the M8A7. With guns like this, you want to be pressing that trigger quickly, and the stopper really does help get that nice burst fire out of the burst fire guns. Also, it can be a little awkward triggering the stoppers while you're playing. Like if you have the M8A7 and then a different gun, and you want to switch between hair trigger mode, it's kind of hard to do it in the action. I find that I usually die when I'm trying to do it, or I fumble with the controller and one of the paddles can fall out while I'm doing it. Next, the D-pads. Wow, the D-pads. How exciting. So the default D-pad is this cool octagonal one. This is the one that's always shown in the promo shots, which makes sense since it's the more stylish of the two. It's cool looking but doesn't have many applications. The only advantage it has over the regular controller is that it's easier to press the diagonal directions. So if you're playing Fallout, it's way easier to access your quick weapon select in the diagonals, instead of awkwardly fidgeting about and getting your up or right assigned slot instead. It's also just easier to use in the standard D-pad, at the cost of being way bigger. I haven't played too many fighting games on Xbox, but this pad would also probably make it easier to do quarter turns and such, and might even work better than the joystick. If you've tried this in a fighting game a lot, let me know in the comments. The other D-pad is just a fancy aluminum version of the regular controller's cross-shaped D-pad. Unlike the regular controller's D-pad, which is plastic and flimsy, the Elite has a very substantial cross-shaped pad that looks really good. It's all silvery and shiny and stuff. It's way smaller than the big round pad, so it makes sense to use for a game where you don't need the D-pad very much, like Call of Duty. You always need to be using one of these two pads, as without either of them, the Elite controller has this ugly green staging area. I guess it's green so you notice that there's no pad on it. Finally, the so-called paddles, also called tabs or widgets. Where to begin? These little tabs amount to a crazy number of features. The Xbox One Elite Wireless Controller comes with these 4 aluminum tabs, 2 big and 2 small. Each one is made of brushed aluminum and feels very nice and substantial. They all pop into place using the same weird magnets, and they all work really well. They go in so easily that it's great, but sometimes on rare occasions I've had one fall out while playing vigorously, usually while trying to change the hair trigger locks in the middle of a game. There are 4 tabs in all, 2 small straight ones, and 2 big hockey stick shaped ones that are meant to go in the lower sections. Each tab can fit into any of the 4 slots, but really each tab is meant for a particular slot. I don't know why you'd want to put the tabs in a different paddle slot, but you can. When fully loaded up, the controller gains 4 paddles, which you press with your ring finger or your pinky on the back of the controller. The default configuration for the tabs are A, B, X, and Y, which makes sense. The idea behind the paddles is that you don't need to take your thumb off the thumbstick to press the buttons. This lets you do things like jumping in Call of Duty or Halo, which is done with the A button, where you normally need to take your thumb off the right thumbstick to press the A button. This amounts to a huge advantage and is easily the best feature of the controller. The action on these buttons is incredibly tight. You barely have to twitch your finger at all to use them. As a result, they're an incredible shoot button for Call of Duty or Halo. This ultra low action saves about 25 milliseconds, compared to the triggers when the hair trigger locks are enabled. And consequently, you are able to win firefights in Call of Duty you would just lose using a normal controller. I'm not kidding, this feature wins you games of Call of Duty and Halo. It's just so easy to press these little triggers. It's an amazing feature. As an added plus, since the movement is much more subtle than pressing down on the trigger, if you're using this as a trigger, your aim is disrupted a lot less. It's easier to aim. Another excellent use of the paddles is, like I said, as a jump button. In all shooters, it lets you aim and shoot at the same time. This opens up a lot of moves in, say, Call of Duty that you couldn't otherwise do. And it's already the default setting. It's just awesome. The paddles also work as great alternates for the left and right stick buttons. The thumb pads are kind of hard to press down. In Advanced Warfare, there's a lot of agility moves you do with the left thumb pad button, and they're hard to use while moving around effectively. This configuration just kicks ass in Advanced Warfare when you're using the paddle instead of pressing the stick down. It's just so much easier. The right paddle can then be assigned to a crouch function, which lets you crouch while shooting or slide way more effectively. For example, see, it's really hard to press the left stick down on this regular controller, the Elite controller, without pushing the stick all the way to the left or right. It's just hard, and it's really hard to do it quickly. This means that to quickly do, say, a left dodge and a right dodge in Advanced Warfare, you have to do this big movement with your thumb and press it hard, twice. It's slow, it's tiring, and you usually get killed when you're trying to do it. On the other hand, with the paddle set to light stick, you can do this very subtle motion. On the other hand, with the paddle set to left stick, you can do this very subtle motion instead and kick crazy amounts of noob butt. It's just awesome, and I really like this setup for that reason. The paddles are all fully customizable via the software. As you can see, I've had them set to almost every possible button, and each setup has uses for different games or just different styles of play. There are a few downsides though. First of all, the paddles make it harder to hold. With all 4 paddles and batteries, the Elite controller just becomes this incredibly heavy beast that's just uncomfortable to hold. In addition, it might just be me, but I find the 4 paddles confusing. My pinkies don't have enough dexterity to use the big paddles effectively, and I'd always rather be using those fingers to hold the controller itself, which again is heavy. Even with only 2 paddles in, it's not as comfortable to hold and tires your hand out after a while. I always take the paddles out when I'm not using them for a game. They're basically only useful in games where split-second timing matters, which is, to be fair, a large segment of games. For any strategy or role-playing games, though, you usually have plenty of time, so you don't need the paddles at all. Since with 4 paddles in, you're constantly thinking about what move is assigned to which paddle, you usually spend more time thinking about what to press than you would have saved by using the paddle in the first place. It takes a huge amount of practice to master a 4 paddle configuration, and unless you're excessively pro and don't mind a lot of training, this is a disadvantage. Also, since the action is so low, the paddles can easily be pressed down accidentally, especially if you rest the controller on your lap. This can easily accidentally stop the movie on Netflix or some other annoying stuff that you didn't want. Basically, I almost never use the 2 large paddles, they're just uncomfortable, but the small ones are amazing and help you win at video games. I imagine there might be someone out there using all 4 paddles effectively in a game like Call of Duty, so if that's you, let me know what your setup is in the comments. Finally, at the end of this cavalcade of features, the controller has this switch in the middle that lets you switch between 2 button configurations, also called button mappings. You can map the buttons of any controller on the Xbox One, not just the Elite, but this makes it way easier to do so as you can instantly switch from a normal setup to a custom one where A, B, X, and Y buttons might do completely different things. This is a really useful feature, and it adds a lot of versatility to the controller. You need to set this feature up using the Xbox Accessories application, so let's talk about the app now. The Xbox comes with the Xbox Accessories app already included to customize the Elite controller. You don't have to install anything, just plug it in and bam! Bam! The Xbox Accessories app is incredibly slick, and it's one of the nicer parts of the Elite controller's bevy of cool features. It not only lets you map the buttons, but change the sensitivity of the joysticks and the triggers, and even change the brightness of the Xbox logo. This last feature is useful since it tends to be pretty bright by default. The button mapping section is intuitive and works really well. You just hold the button and then map it to another. You can map the paddles to whatever you want and even map other buttons to something else. For example, I like to have one of my paddles as shoot and then the right trigger as jump in one of my setups. This is good for Call of Duty as it really lets me kick some butt. Then I can just switch back to my standard setup when I go to Netflix with the switch button. There's a huge amount of customization possible. Once you get a setup you like, you can save it and then easily assign it to either configuration preset. The app comes with a few built-in setups for games like Halo Guardians, which are usually just mappings for the paddles, but these built-ins aren't overly useful and I never use them after trying them once. The joystick and trigger sensitivity is nice. It's definitely a more elite feature and honestly I've never needed to use it. I tried to change it to make the triggers more sensitive in Call of Duty, but it didn't seem to do much. And on the other hand, my attempts to change the thumbstick sensitivity resulted in controls that were too jittery. Overall, the Xbox accessory app is pretty cool, but it does take a while to edit a setup on the fly. You need to open the app up, and you always need to navigate through like 5 menus every time to change the mapping. This is annoying to making little tweaks, but overall, it's not a big deal. Finally, the Xbox One Elite controller works as a controller for Windows PCs. You just plug it in and the controller installs itself on your computer. I think it has like a little chip in it that has its own software. You can even get the Xbox Accessories app to customize it, but that only works on Windows 10. Since I missed the free upgrade to Windows 10 by just one day, I can't change the button layout on my PC yet, but that's on Windows 8.1. This feature is one of my favorites. It's incredibly useful, as it means you can use this controller for many other things other than playing Xbox. You can use it to play things on your computer. But seriously, even once your Xbox is obsolete or you've started playing PS4 instead, this controller will still be one of your coolest PC accessories. This is one of the reasons why the Sirius color scheme is nice, because if you have it part of your computer layout, it doesn't look like a toy. It's not going to make you look like you're not a serious programmer or what have you. By default, the Elite controller works wirelessly with your Xbox, but to make it work wirelessly with your computer, you need to buy an adapter for about $30. It could be worth it, but I do most of my gaming on the Xbox anyway, so I've never bought one.
So that's about it for the extensive catalog of features, but what do I really think? Overall, this controller kicks ass. It has many cool features, some of which, like the paddles, actually do help you win more in games like Call of Duty. Other than the fact that it's a bit heavy, it doesn't really have any downsides. The price tag seems a bit huge, but it's really useful, not just for playing Xbox, but for working with your PC as well. So when you take all that into account, it's kind of reasonable. Some of the features, like the stoppers or the big paddles, aren't really that useful, but the features that are useful, like the small paddles or the special D-pad, more than make up for. The customization features are fairly deep, with even a pro gamer having tons of stuff to do. You can easily spend weeks in the sensitivity for the trigger settings trying to figure out what everything does. Overall, I'd rate this product a 9 out of 10. Minus 1 point because the stoppers kind of suck and there's no support at all for a rechargeable battery, which I would kind of really like. If they released a rechargeable battery for this controller, I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. Once again, I've included a link where you can get this controller for a special price. So it's right down there in the description, just down there. Yeah, down there, I can see it. So just go ahead and click it and you'll get there and you'll get that Xbox One controller for a special price. So just go ahead and do that. Finally, I have a question I wanted to ask you. What feature of the Xbox One Elite controller do you think is the coolest? Let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to respond to each one personally. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Get new content every single week with the Tech Reviewer. Well, I've been the Tech Reviewer. Have yourself a good day and keep it elite.